Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Darren Doctorman.
And this is Ashley Miller,
And we are the Inglorious.
Treksperts.
And we're back. We're joining the Academy this week, not Starfleet Academy. We're going back to the Academy years for another Trek's Not Taken with the great Ralph Winter. And of course, we had explored this territory a few years ago with the late David Lowery. And David was a terrific guy. He wrote the movie Dreamscape, among other things that he did. And it was really a shock when he passed away last year.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the hits keep on coming because a dear friend of the podcast, a wonderful man, 102 years young, Ralph Sinensky passed away this weekend. And we really thought he was going to live to 150. I mean, if anyone could, it'd be him. He had the mind of a steel trap. I mean, it was remarkable how he remembered in perfect detail. He was like V'ger. Just everything that he had experienced, not only as a director for the original Star Trek, but of course for A Little House on the Prairie. And I think we even got him to talk about Casablanca, the TV series, and the Paper Chase, and some other things. And what a delight he was, wasn't he,
Yeah.
Darren?
Oh, I love talking to him, and he was a living link to the past and to this whole world that we miss just by being as old as we are. Um, but it was so fun to hear him go through the same stuff again, because it was as if he were reliving it there and then. It was so
Ashley,
much
I,
fun.
I think one of the true joys was about a little over a year ago. Um, we did a convention in San Jose, GalaxyCon San Jose, and we had already tried to bring Ralph Sinetsky out for Vegas, but his physical condition, not his mental condition, wouldn't allow it. But we arranged, thanks to the largesse of GalaxyCon's Mike Broder, to bring him out to San Jose, and that was really special, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know what? I have to tell you though that look, first of all, getting to meet him and say hello and shake his hand, all of that was astonishing. One of my great regrets of our Treksperts career was that was a panel that I had to skip out on because if
Yeah,
you remember that day we were doing the commentary, the Star Trek V commentary with Shatner. And
yeah,
so I
yeah.
was running around back and forth to the stage to get that set. So I couldn't go. But what an experience to meet him. How wonderful was it that Shatner and Ralph were, reunited
Well, that
in the
was
green room.
really extraordinary
Yeah.
because we had planned to unite. We checked with Bill, to make sure, and he was thrilled about meeting him, about seeing him. It had been the first time since the Tholian Web. And so we brought them together in the green room, and it was simply just this remarkable meeting of two legends. At the time, 93-year-old William Shatner, 101-year-old Ralph Sinetsky, and it was like no time had passed. They had a lovely conversation, and Bill was so happy to see him, and so happy that he was there, and that we had brought him out and were treating him so well. That was really important to Bill, and it was just a really fantastic special day, because not only did we bring him out and clearly meant so much to him, we had a wonderful panel, which in case you want to relive that panel, I think it was about a year ago. I think it was called Another Side of Ralph Sinetsky, or This Side of Ralph Sinetsky Revisited, or something. But check it out. And of course, we had him on the podcast a few years ago as well,
Mhm.
where he held court and talked about his memories of all these remarkable episodes
Yeah.
that he did. And I think the fact, not only the fact that he remembered these episodes in such amazing detail, but also the fact that they were significant episodes. I mean, Darren, certainly one of your most beloved episodes, for a variety of reasons, is Bread and Circuses,
Yeah.
which he was responsible for.
Yeah. And he was able to tell us, a little bit of the machinations of how that was put together, and the casting and all sorts of things. And he, it sounded like he enjoyed making that episode. I don't think it was his favorite of all of them, but
No, it was interesting because one of the things we talked to him about was the fact that he has not said great things about that episode in the past, particularly the gladiatorial sequences, because it
yeah,
was right as Paramount was taking over Desilu, and he felt the schedule cuts and the budget cuts really
right,
hurt him on that.
right.
And we called him out on that, saying how important this episode is, what a great musing on network politics, and just how special this episode is. And he said, yeah, he realized. I think the thing that bugged him the most was that he felt he didn't live in the character. Like, he felt he should have spent more time on Kirk and his reaction to Spock and McCoy in the arena, and that he was more focused on the action and the run and the jump, which, I think we tried to
I think
dissuade him from thinking
he
that
was too close to it. He was
Yeah.
definitely too close to it, because I think that is one of the most character-driven episodes ever. Not only for Kirk and showing how Kirk reacts in a very pressure-filled situation, but also Spock and McCoy in the cell having a heart-to-heart. It's absolutely mesmerizing.
Well, not until Quester tapes did you have a shared credit, at least on screen, between Roddenberry and Kuhn. So,
Right.
like, that also was very unique, even though they had worked on other, each of them had worked on each other's material. The fact that they had a shared on-screen credit, and
They
you
were
see the
forced to
best
share
of Gene
credit.
Kuhn and the best of Gene Roddenberry in that episode.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, a lot of people in the memorials have pointed out, Metamorphosis. Frankly, I think This Side of Paradise is a much better episode than Metamorphosis, because it's about our characters. It's not about the guest stars. And it is beautifully done. And we've heard Ralph talk about working with Leonard and how much Leonard appreciated his direction, because at the time, TV directors were often considered traffic cops, but this is a director who took the time to really work with the actors on their performance.
Yeah, and he's always been heralded as a very good actor's director.
Yeah. And I love the fact that he wasn't so slavish to his blocking. He came up with that wonderful sequence where, he was throwing a few curves with the location,
right,
and ended up having Leonard, hanging from the tree, which is one of the most memorable sequences in any Star Trek.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, speaking of memorable sequences, who can forget the risk is our business speech in Return to Tomorrow?
Well, we certainly don't.
No,
we don't.
That's why we're aboard her.
Yeah. So, and I think, looking at his directorial, there's an episode that I'm not particularly fond of, but I think is beautifully directed. Is There in Truth No Beauty? With the wide angle lenses and the his attempt to convey insanity, and the way that episode is shot, particularly because he had so little time and was lost all that time to Gene Roddenberry and the great Idic debate. Where Gene wanted him to wear Spock to wear the Idic necklace so Lincoln Enterprises could sell it, and while everybody
first
was arguing,
he wanted Shatner to wear it.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And that wasn't going to happen.
No, how much do I get?
Yeah, right.
Nothing. What percentage is mine?
Yeah, but it was just remarkable. And for those of you who want an even deeper dive, besides our own interviews with Ralph, he also did a blog, Ralph Cinema Trek, which is worth checking out on the internet. So you want to Google Ralph Cinema Trek, and he goes into a great deal of detail about all these episodes he directed, and also Little House on the Prairie and a lot of his other projects. So you want to check that out. But again, this was one of the true highlights of our Trek journeys, having the chance to not only we talk about, yes, it was exciting for us to meet him and talk about Star Trek and one of the last living links to the era of the original, but what it meant for him, how special it was for him that we could give back some of the joy we've gotten, and he could see the appreciation and the love that people had for him, and for him to see Shatner and how much it meant. Because after the event, we got so many emails and communicated with him, just telling us how much it meant to him to have us facilitate that, because of course he was having some health issues, and there were things we needed to arrange for in terms of oxygen, in terms of wheelchair, in terms of different things. And it was just very special. And Dave Blass met him, and a bunch of the other Terry Farrell met, and it was like the whole thing was just wonderful. It was
a
wonderful.
wonderful moment, and made more wonderful by all the websites taking our photos and sharing
Holy shit.
them without.
Well, welcome to the world of the World Wide Web. That's the
Yeah.
way things work. I don't expect credit. I don't ask for credit. You know why? Because I was there.
Yeah.
So I don't really care.
There.
And I got to experience it firsthand. So, you know, if I sweated all the people that rip off my books and this podcast, I'd spend a lot of time being upset over things that I have no control over. Speaking of things we have no control over, wonderful letter in the mailbag from listener Bruce Potty. I had to share this with you, Bruce Patty. Let's finish the last episode. Overall, of Khan, the podcast. Overall, I find myself whelmed by the series, not overwhelmed, whelmed by the series. And he was wondering if we were going to cover it in the future. We've talked about it, but then we would have to listen to the whole thing, and I'm not sure any of us can commit to that. But he did add, and I love this is the greatest PS of all time. Thanks, Darren, for the reminder to change my smoke detector batteries. So I'm so that was a great email from Bruce. Thank you, Bruce Patty, and for your email. And we're glad that we could contribute to the public service. What else? I got a new installment. I need a theme. If somebody has an organ or some kind of music for the latest installment of The Adventures of Mark's Plumber. Anyone have a theme? This is the new adventures of Mark's Plumber. So the plumber was over here today to deal with the plumbing issue. And as those of you who listen to the podcast regularly know, that my plumber is apparently a big Star Trek fan and has a lot of Star Trek questions for me. So today he thought he was going to stump me. Came in, the first thing he asked me, so, Mr. Trekspert,
oh God,
what is the number of the Enterprise? I said NCC 1701. Is this a trick question? No, that's it. How do you know that?
Oh my God.
How do you know that?
How do you know?
I said because I'm the Trekspert, dude. I even if I wasn't the Trekspert, I would know that. You want the rest of the ships in the fleet?
Wow.
He goes, oh, are they all the 1701? I said, yeah, except for A, bloody B, bloody C, bloody D, but they're all 1701, all the Enterprises. So he said, well, I'm watching Enterprise now. He goes, it's not very good. I said, I could have told you that. He said he's about to abandon it, but he loves Star Trek, wants to know what he should watch next. I said, well, Deep Space Nine, very special. So that was lovely. And as he was working, he proceeded to tell me.
Is his name Mario by any chance?
No, it's not a Mario. He doesn't talk like that at all.
You know, many people don't know this, but Mario doesn't say, it's me, Mario. He says, Itsumi, Mario. Itsumi is Japanese for super.
Oh,
Super.
Well, I just want you to know that he proceeded to tell me that we're living in a simulation because of the Mandela effect. I said, you the publishers of the Star Trek photo novel? He goes, no, the Mandela effect. You know what that is? I said, yeah. He says things are changing. He says, and he uses an example. A lot of people think Sinbad was in Aladdin, did the voice in Aladdin, but that's not true. And reality is changing. And he gives me all these examples. He says, you mean like in Moonraker with where everyone remembers Jaws' girlfriend wearing braces?
Because she
Yes,
did.
exactly like that. And he said reality is being changed ever since the
Hadron Collider.
It's splintered the realities, and that's why things are changing. And he says, doesn't that make sense? And I said, no, because I'm due back here on planet Earth. And he goes, wait a second, you're a Star Trek fan. I thought you'd be open to this. I said, yeah, I'm a Star Trek fan, but I'm not insane.
Oh my God. Well, I gotta
tell you,
that's
a T-shirt.
The whole Mandela effect thing. I mean, other than the Moonraker one, I'll tell you what I saw recently that kind of blew my mind and made me think maybe there's something to it. That and maybe this is more of a 4:30 movie thing, but I very strongly remember Elle Woods in Legally Blonde driving a pink car. But apparently,
does she not?
No, and apparently it's black now, which makes no sense. But apparently that's the truth. So there you go.
He got
So
me on
we're in
some
a
movie
simulation.
where he said the color of something changed. And I said, yeah, it's because the color timing was screwed up on the home video. Oh, like in Risky Business, it was a white shirt. Now it's a pink shirt. I'm just like, yeah, that's just bad color timing when they
Yeah.
did the new Video Master.
If you really want to impress me, it's like
not mirror mirror.
Tom Cruise was the lead, but now Curtis Armstrong is the lead.
So okay, so that's my latest plumber story. But he is. I'm anxious to see what he thinks of Deep Space Nine. I did tell him, however, that he should immediately, since he's a big Next Generation fan, watch Picard season 3. And I said, which is sort of like the 8th season of Next Gen, and it's wonderful, and you'll really enjoy it. He said, well, I better watch Picard season 1 and 2 first to see what happens. I said, not necessary. Just go right to season 3. You don't need to watch.
And apparently, Picard season 3 has been upgraded to 4K for some reason. Did you read that?
It was 4K on Paramount Plus. Yeah,
no, it was not.
It was 2K.
It was 2K.
Oh, maybe because the post was, I don't know.
No,
maybe it's the Mandela effect.
Nelson Mandela added 2
It was
whole Ks.
never released on home video in 4K.
That's right.
I thought it was on Paramount Plus in 4K.
No, look it up.
No, I think it was finished in 2K.
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
Because no, there's no way.
No, there is way.
Let's call Terry.
Yeah. Terry.
Why would they post it in 2K? That makes no sense. And then why would they go back and then post? No, I just
look
maybe
it up.
It wasn't broadcast.
There are sites all over the place saying that this was a big surprise, that they upgraded it. So,
if sites said so, I gotta go with the sites.
Yeah, but did they get it from the Treksperts? So
I'll just call Terry and find out what this whole 4K thing is about. I just don't think it was streamed or then. No, you know what? I went to see it at the freaking Grove for the final episode, and the whatever they showed the DCP, that was a 4K DCP.
You can't tell. You can't tell on a projector.
Oh, look,
honest.
Okay, we're going to talk to Terry because this is just vexing. Because I don't buy this shit.
You're vexed.
I'm vexed. I'm extremely vexed. Speaking of vexed, you know what I just got for my birthday? Naomi got for me the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood making of book.
Oh, that's
cool.
I
didn't write it, and it's freaking great. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous book. I highly recommend it. So, and I guess they're going to do one for each of Quentin's movies. Nice. So I don't think I'm going to buy Death Proof, but I'll get the rest of them. So it's really terrific. Really beautiful job. It's from Insight, our friends at Insight, who did Ed Gross's beautiful Superman book. And they do really spectacular work. So anyway, highly recommend it. I do want to get the new Cameron Crowe book, which I have not read yet, but it's supposed to be quite good. Big fan of Cameron Crowe. Okay. Anyway, that's enough about that. Couple of housekeeping matters. We're going to be in Columbus the beginning of December. I hope you'll join us there. DAREN is going to be in Ticonderoga later this month. So if you've been itching to go visit the Star Trek studio tour in Ticonderoga, New York, this is like your last chance before they close up for the winter. So go
and
check it out.
They have just broken ground for the enclosure for the Galileo shuttle.
So you get to see the broken ground, but not the Galileo.
Nice.
Well, they just set the foundation today.
Fantastic. Well, I got to tell you, that's a reason for them to go next year, not to go not to go in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
like some other people are
just
going
looking at broken
next
ground.
year. Look, there's no bad time to go to Ticonderoga. This is a special experience. We talked about it on the show. It's even more special because Bill Shatner and Darren Dochterman are there, not necessarily in order.
Just announced Louise Sorel.
Yeah, but I forgot about her. I don't remember.
Oh,
her.
Yeah, because Spock kissed you.
Because Spock erased my memory of that episode. Requiem for Methuselah does not exist in my universe. It's the Mandela effect. It's been erased.
Wow. I am Mandela.
Yeah, because according to all these universes converging, apparently Spock had some sister that we never knew anything about.
A sister. You don't have a brother.
CERN. It must be CERN. Oh my! Can I just tell you? I hate conspiracy theories. I hate conspiracy theorists. I hate conspiracy theories, and it's just like it just blows my mind when people tell me this shit and believe it. So anyway,
The funny thing about the Mandela effect is, I feel like that it's where it takes its name from, right? People thinking, "Oh, Nelson Mandela died in prison." Like, where were you? I think it's actually the easiest one to explain because
yes.
people probably conflate Nelson Mandela with Steve Biko.
He says to me, he says, "Is it Sex in the City and Sex and the City?" I said, "Sex in the City?" And he goes, "No, it's now called Sex and the City, but we all remember Sex in the City."
No, we
It
don't.
Yeah,
changed.
because that was the name of the show.
There was a fucking ampersand in the.
I know, but I forgot. And so, you know what? So I forgot because I kind of remembered a different way. That doesn't mean that reality is being changed by Darren Cross or whatever his name is.
Although it'd
Oh,
be, you know what? If Darren Cross started fucking with reality, I think it would be kind of entertaining.
I love this stuff. I love, this was one of my great plumber. And then it's so funny. He leaves, and then 10 minutes later, he comes back. He forgot his paper towel. And apparently, like 2 squares left on the paper towel roll. I
But
don't
there
know
were
why he
3.
came back.
Mandela
But
effect.
meanwhile, but then he had forgotten like all his like plumbing equipment. So he came back like 2 hours later to get that. It's so fascinating.
Your plumber's
So
name isn't
anyway,
Christopher, is it?
Christopher Plummer. No, it's not. It's not. I see you. I see that clog. Do you see it?
Me.
Wow.
But he does plumb in the original Klingon. Okay. So
Plum.
So we got the Ticonderoga with Darren. We got Columbus with all 3 of us. And then, of course, you know, tickets are going fast, apparently, for Star Trek Las Vegas next August.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking of going,
you better make
get
your
on
decision soon.
Because it's going to be pretty spectacular. Hey, also, if you're not already watching us on YouTube, you want to check out the podcast on YouTube because we are dropping some exclusive episodes that are exclusive to YouTube. And, thanks to our producer, Brian Mix. So you want to check that out. You know, when a new episode, we got Talking Trek on TV, which is one of our pals from Vegas, which will not be on the podcast. Great. And we got some special episodes coming up that I think you're really going to enjoy. And we're also doing bonus episodes. So when we do our Star Trek 4 retrospective next year for the anniversary, we'll also be offering our John Shuck to subscribers only. So to get the bonus content, you want to subscribe at Treksperts.com. And you want to check out YouTube, which is entirely free, and subscribe, like and subscribe today. Okay. So that's all I have right now because I'm ready to talk about the Academy. I'm ready to talk about the subject of our episode.
Oh,
it's another Trek's Not Taken. The Academy years. So this was interesting. This was something we all heard about back in the 80s. Harve Bennett wanted to do a prequel to the original Star Trek as a way to keep Star Trek going. Cast got too old, and also it was a chance for him to get behind the camera. He was pushing to direct, but it would have shown how Kirk, Spock, and McCoy met at the Academy. What's your response, Darren, when you first heard about the Academy years?
Well, my first reaction was, well, of course, that's the next logical step to go because the cast is getting too expensive and they want to reboot it. That made perfect sense to me. As to, was the timing correct? Who can say? Obviously, it wasn't.
No man could say.
That's right. But it seemed extremely logical and reasonable to me.
Yeah. What about you, Ashley? What was your response when you heard in Starlog, I presume, about the Academy years? Or it was called, a lot of people called it different things. Starfleet Academy,
Star Trek
Academy
babies.
Years, Star Trek babies. Yeah.
Exactly. I called it bullshit because I felt like, look, if you're going to do a Starfleet Academy movie, then it has nothing to do with Spock because it's very clear, at least to me, from Where No Man Has Gone Before, that Spock and Kirk are still just sort of getting to know each other in that opening.
Getting to know you.
Come on, it's like, if it's not about Gary Mitchell, right? It's like, come on, he's his bro, he's his best guy. It's like, and that, of course, that would never make it into that film because like that just wouldn't fly with this studio. Most of those people like shouldn't be getting together that early. Some of them are already on the ship.
That's who Tom Hardy should have played, a young Gary Mitchell.
That's right.
Tom Hardy would have been good as a young Gary Mitchell.
It's the silly sort of thinking that leads you to, oh, I don't know, like the crew composition of the Enterprise and Strange New Worlds. It just makes no sense at all. So I was very opposed, and not even because the cast was bitching about it. Like I thought, I don't think I never thought they were done with making movies with the original cast. I thought they were just kind of going to do this thing the way that that Ralph and everybody explained it, but I could not get my head around it creatively. It made no sense. I rejected it.
I see. I would have been interested. I would have been interested. I think that even though there are problems with that script, it's probably more true to the original series than, say, certainly Star Trek 2009 was. Because Star Trek 2009 is doing Star Trek as a Star Wars movie, whereas I do feel like the script had some interesting things and interesting ideas because it was dealing with xenophobia. It was dealing with some very Star Trekian things. And of course, as we mentioned in the panel with Ralph, it was inspired by the movie The Santa Fe Trail,
right.
Which is an interesting movie and an interesting template for what the Academy years would have been. The idea of doing a Star Trek prequel goes way back because Gene Roddenberry had been thinking about this as early as the late 60s.
Yeah.
And Walter Koenig was complaining about the fact he was going to be cut out again, wasn't he, Darren?
Well, I mean, there's always a chance to cut out Chekhov.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the thing. It never made sense to have Chekhov in any of these.
Yeah.
Whether it be Star Trek 2009 or when you're at Chekhov wasn't aboard the Enterprise, or if he was on the lower decks. He was a attendee or
to
whoever.
To be completely honest, there really was no reason to have him on the show either. But let's not go.
Oh my God! Wow. You know why? Because Walter is a delightful human being.
Yeah, that's correct.
With great stories about Star Trek.
Who would have done wondrous things even without Chekhov.
When next time we have him on stage, we should play "Hey Hey We're the Monkeys."
Oh yeah. Or "Hey Hey We're the Monkey,"
and have him come out to the monkeys,
and then have Tom Hardy battle the monkey.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Or just have Tom Hardy battle.
Now we're making deep dive references to our own podcast.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I'm sure he could walk macho enough.
Yeah. Walk macho.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting about this, I think Ralph, really tried to keep this alive even after Harve left the franchise after 5, in the hopes that they would do it. But with the anniversary, God, it's crazy that we're talking about the anniversary of the 25th anniversary was Undiscovered Country.
Yeah.
25th anniversary. We're talking about that during the 60th anniversary. And didn't that feel like an eternity when Star Trek said, "Oh, this is it. This is it. Star Trek's ending. It's like this is the final mission of the Enterprise." Oh my God, 25 years.
Yeah.
And it was like
nothing.
It's like it was nothing. That was half of 50, which was 10 years ago.
Right.
So crazy.
It's like we would be due for the final Deep Space Nine movie now based on that calendar.
I don't know. Man, there's so many great what ifs about Star Trek.
I can live with that.
You can live with that. Well, you're not a Deep Space Nine fan.
Yeah.
I'm not a hater.
No, you're not a hater. No. You're not a hater. You're not a Bill hater. You're not a hater. See, you're not like Ashley. Ashley and I love everything.
Yeah.
And that's loving nothing.
Except for some things. We just can't contain ourselves anymore.
No, it's funny. I mean, I told my plumber was asking me all these questions. What should I watch next? I said Deep Space Nine. What should I watch after that? I said, I think you're done.
You're done. Yeah. It's over now.
I said, go back and watch the original series again and again and again and again. He did tell me that he watched all the Next Generation movies and that they're all wonderful except for Nemesis. I said, okay. If that's what you believe.
I hope he's a good plumber.
He is a good plumber. He's a good plumber. Yeah.
Because he's not a good Trekspert.
No. We should have him on the show one day.
Number of the ship, which is important.
He does know. He thought it was so funny. He thought he had me too.
Yeah.
Oh, Altman's never going to know this one.
The Trekspert.
It's funny if he'd asked me like Captain Kirk's safe number, I wouldn't know.
Right. If you ask
people, that's what they always say when they think, "Oh, so you're a Trekspert." Okay, well, tell me. They ask those stupid questions like the safe number and I'm like, I don't know. I said, I know about the show. I know about the making of the show, the production. I don't know the minutia of the
Right.
nonsense,
Like, what's the
or about
complete-
anything after Deep Space Nine.
It's a complete self-destruct code for the Enterprise. All I remember is 000 destruct 0, right? Like that's all I've got. And if I were in command of the Enterprise and we needed to self-destruct because the Klingons were going to take over, I could get us over like that last yard, but there's no way, man. We'd be screwed. It just,
You know what?
nope,
I could
Klingons
actually
get it.
I could curate like the perfect Star Trek watch list. Like after Deep Space Nine, like these are the episodes of Voyager you should watch. These are the Enterprise episodes you should watch.
It'd be one page.
And no, I mean, and then, you know, so you don't have to watch all 7 seasons. But, you know, I'm not going to do that because, you know, I'm not, let people, who knows, maybe he'll like it.
Maybe they'll come looking for a piece of our action.
I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I really think that this Star Trek The Academy years could have been interesting. It's interesting because, of course, the cast pushed back so much on it that they then rewrote it so that they would have Shatner and Nimoy do the raps and introduce the film.
Do like, you mean like No Tears for Caesar kind of rap?
No, they would not hip hop. That they would like be at the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie.
They do a rap much like this is.
Yes.
Yeah, they would be talking about their time at the Academy, and it would flash back to it.
Remember
I don't know.
The time?
I think it would be interesting, you know, if this film existed, and it's just so interesting because clearly Ralph is still a little bit about Star Trek 2009, and you know, but is that kind of thing where he says, oh, and they did this and they did this, and clearly they read it. I don't believe that.
No,
I just think that there's certain eddies and currents when you're developing Star Trek that you know, are inevitable way, you know, to go based on the backstory of the character.
And honestly, I think if they had read it, it would have been better.
Oh, okay, that too. But we got some great stuff coming up. We got a Deck 78. We're celebrating the 45th anniversary of Flash Gordon. Of course, on December 7th, the weekend of December 7th, we'll be looking back at Star Trek: The Motion Picture. A lot of great episodes coming up on the Treksperts. But now, without any further ado, stay tuned for this deep dive into Star Trek: The Academy years, yet another Trek Knock taken after these brief commercial messages. And then we'll be back with a few closing thoughts, so stay tuned.
I shall request of the War Department upon your graduation next week that all of you be assigned to the most dangerous branch of the United States Army.
Iron rails to Kansas, iron nerves from there on, as you head for the Santa Fe Trail where nothing grows but trouble. Across the years they roll, the fighting heroes who made America great, the men who'll make America thrill. Errol Flynn as Captain Jeb Stuart, Raymond Massey as the infamous John Brown, Ronald Reagan, the Gipper of Notre Dame, as gallant George Custer. History springs to flaming life as they carve a path through the wilderness. Robert E. Lee, Sheridan, Longstreet, Pickett, Hood, Tex Bell, and Windy Brody, the famous Prairie Scouts. And the match for them all, lovely Olivia de Havilland.
Are you in love with him and not with me?
I guess I am, George.
Oh, wait a minute. I can handle this proposal from now on. Thanks, son.
There you are. Put your hands up and keep them up. I advise you to make no move towards your guns.
One more murder won't mark you any deeper than you are now, Mr. Brown.
I intend to be a marked man.
Forward and a get up! Ho!
Hey, we're back. It's me, Mark A. Altman. I'm with my fellow Treksperts, DAREN, DOCHTERMAN,
and Ashley Edward Miller. So you're probably sitting there saying, why did they just show us this trailer for this Errol Flynn movie?
The Santa Fe trailer.
That's an excellent question, sir. The reason we showed it is because the film was an inspiration for the movie we're going to talk about next. Our Trek's Not Taken a series is continuing. As you know, we talked about unmade Star Trek episodes from the original series on day one. We learned about what was it, the monster, the creature?
Oh, the beast.
The
beast that will not let go of Kirk.
And
he doesn't want to quit him.
Earlier today, we talked about the Phase 2 series, and tomorrow we're going to be talking about In Thy Image a little bit more and how it led to Star Trek: The Motion Picture. But right now, we're going to talk about a fascinating project in the history of Star Trek. It was Star Trek: The Academy years. This was a film which was going to show how Kirk, Spock, and McCoy first met at Starfleet Academy. Sound familiar? Well, it should, because this was developed, 20 years before JJ's film. So we're going to learn all about that, why that film was developed at Paramount during the height of the Star Trek original series motion pictures. We're going to learn about what it was about, why it got canceled, and how it might have inspired the JJ movies. So without any further ado, it's our true delight and thrill to bring out producer Ralph Winter once again to talk about this misunderstood movie in Star Trek history. Well, Ralph, there's so many apocryphal stories about the Academy years. Some people called it Starfleet Academy. People call it, all different things. I'd love to hear, since this was a movie you were going to produce and were intimately involved with its inception, maybe walk us through how this came about and why.
I don't remember if it was before or after 5. I want to say it was after 5. And I think the Back to the Future movies had come out as a trilogy, or at least that we were in process. I got my timelines, a little fuzzy. But basically at Harve Bennett's daughter's bat mitzvah, I pitched him the story.
What made you think that was the opportune time?
I don't know. I don't know. It was just, I'm not sure what the conversation was, but here I am talking to the father of the honoree. And anyway, I said to him, I think we've demonstrated that we can do a young Spock at various ages. We should go back and we should discover them at the Academy. We should figure out those relationships. We should figure out why they're friends, what it means, and build that back into where we are now. And he thought it was a great idea, and then we sat later with David Lowery, and then we kicked around all of this. And, there's just some fun, iconic things that we came up with, but it was mostly a racial story. And it was, instead of, Star Trek has a fantastic tradition of talking about social and cultural issues, but in a way that's distant from us. And by looking at that in the distance, only later do we realize, oh, that's us. That's what it's about. So, I don't know which episode it is, you guys know. The one where they're battling people. People are painted black on one side and white, black on the other side and white, and they're fighting.
Let that be your last battlefield. Yeah.
And it's obvious to us, not obvious to them, but the lesson is there nevertheless. So here with Spock being the first one with green blood to come to the Starfleet Academy seemed like the right thing. We said it in San Francisco, but we also talked about Huntsville, Alabama, sort of space camp, how that might have been a better. So we were still debating all of those things, but we really wanted to go back to those origins where Spock could be even more logical, and Bones could be even more emotional, and Jim could be even more of the, renegade, kid, brash, bravado, all of that. So that was the origin of it.
And, it's worth mentioning, you mentioned David Lowery. Unfortunately, David Lowery passed away last year, but David had been a writer that you had very successfully collaborated with on Star Trek V. A lot of the, ultimately we discussed this last year, a lot of the problems that happened to Star Trek V were not a result of David's work. David did great work, and you brought him back for the Academy years. Was it liberating to sort of have this blank canvas in which to paint a new adventure? Because obviously, with the previous films, you had to service certain actors and the ensemble, and everyone's prices were going up. Certainly with Five, the above the line had gotten very high for a Star Trek movie. But now it was a chance to sort of clear the decks and start over.
We weren't really thinking about that. We weren't really thinking about, what the price of those people cost. It didn't matter. That wasn't the issue. I think there was really, in a very pure sense, how do we come to the origins of this story, and what can we learn more about who these characters are as they develop and as we see them in these other things that we've come to love. So it really wasn't, it was not motivated by money, believe me.
And originally, Harve had hoped to direct the film. Isn't that true?
He talked about that. And this became very much for Harve a key moment that he wanted to, he got very excited about it, got very excited about the development of it, and unfortunately sort of drew a line in the sand that if the studio was not going to make this movie, he would walk. And it caused a little bit of a personal rift with he and I, because he expected me to walk with him. And that was tense for both of us for a while. I did pitch this to, I remember pitching this to Frank Mancuso, the chairman of the studio at the time, walking him from one part of the lot to the other. And he was interested, and I said, you shouldn't make, Star Trek 6. You should make Star Trek 6, 7, and 8. You should make 3 of these. And we should examine what these look like and tear apart and meet all these characters. And he liked the idea, but he said, I really have to maximize the 25th anniversary, stay with the original cast, because that was going to be something he could market and sell easier than creating all new characters, all new actors that he would have to manage and go after. We thought of it in the opposite way, that it was a celebration of 25 years of going back. But he's the boss. He didn't think that. And so guess what we did? Yeah.
When he took over the studio, but obviously the film had already been in development because they paid for a script.
Correct.
So for a while at Paramount, there was a real hope of doing it. It wasn't.
Yeah, Sid Ganis and others. Yeah, there was definitely David Kirkpatrick. There was a number of executives who were enthusiastic, as we were, about making the movie.
Did you ever have any kind of, obviously it never went into casting, but I'm sure as you were writing it, you talked about your dream cast. Is that a conversation you ever had? Who would be a great young Bill Shatner? Who would be a great young D. Kelly? Who would be a great young Leonard Nimoy? I mean, was that something that ever was really discussed in your creative meetings?
Not really. We didn't really go into that depth. And, as I said to you earlier today, I wish I had kept better notes and take more photographs. Now I have photographs of the hamburger I ate yesterday, but I don't have photographs of us in the meetings and everything else.
When, we talked earlier about Santa Fe Trail and why we showed this trailer. Can you talk about how this film was influenced by the movie The Santa Fe Trail and how it would have echoed kind of the plot and the story of that film?
Yeah, I think more than anything, I learned this from Nick Meyer on the second movie, that we began to watch other movies just to be inspired and to reference as we're making our movie. And I've continued that tradition on all the movies that I make, that I try to find out from the director, what are some movies that you like, that inspire you about why we're making this movie, so that we can show people, show the crew, a number of examples of why we want to do it this way. And some directors engage with that, others don't. Harve obviously engaged with that. And I think he felt more that their relationship with, it's worth watching. I think it's on
Max. Yeah, it's on Max, yeah.
You can rent it for a couple of bucks. It's that relationship of Errol Flynn and Ronald Reagan that I think is what's echoed inside of the script. That's kind of the banter, the relationship, the jostling, the good-natured part of that is a bit of what is inside of here.
And there's also the whole West Point aspect of it too, that they're at school at the beginning, which is very much like the Academy years, that they're at Starfleet for the first time in school.
Yeah, that's not as much as all this is about, but it's a bit of that. And I think in some ways, just in watching the movie again last night, I'd forgotten. I think that Harve kind of lifted a scene or two, almost word for word, when Van Heflin reads this pamphlet, this incendiary pamphlet about black and white and abolitionists and slave owners that is echoed in here, almost word for word. But, that's part of it, right? We borrow stuff, we look at stuff, we're inspired by stuff. It's not plagiarized, but you can see the beats that are there.
No, as people in this business who love movies, it's natural to be inspired by the films that came before you. I mean, Harve made no secret of the fact that the end of Star Trek III was based on Helen Keller. When he first recognizes his crewmates, when Spock gets his marbles back, so to speak.
Not unlike all of you that watch movies or like movies and enjoy them, a lot of filmmakers do that as well. So, for instance, I know for a fact that Steven Spielberg watches his print of Lawrence of Arabia every year.
Yep.
And I've been to one of those screenings with him, and it's, if you think about the fact that there's touch points to go back to, that movies that you want to watch over and over again because of all of it. It's the cinematography, it's the characters, it's the structure, it's the storytelling, it's the performances, it's all of that stuff. That's kind of what we live for, and that's, as filmmakers and artists, that's how you recharge, is you go back to that touch point and say, okay, I got to watch Gladiator again because I want to watch what Maximus is going to do and how Richard Harris acts, et cetera, et cetera.
You mentioned there's a current of racism in the story.
Oh, yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit?
I think for all of us, it was an issue that, it's not going to get solved, and it's still human nature. I was traveling in China, trying to raise money for pictures, and the racism in China between different factions of people in the Chinese culture, I can't tell the difference. I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's deep. It's human-based.
Tribalism.
It's tribalism. It's inside of every culture. It's obvious with black and white and what we've gone through in America. And it's not over. And so I think we can't forget, we can't stop talking about that. We can't stop illustrating that. We can't stop trying to figure out what it is that makes us act that way and how we solve that,
right,
and how we find places inside of ourselves that we don't realize are racist. And so that was part of the motivation. I spent, in college, I spent a summer in Mississippi working at a church trying to teach basketball and doing some vacation learning, tutoring. And I lived on the other side of the tracks, literally with the black community. I played basketball, but when they found out what I was doing, the doors were locked. The game changed. They wouldn't pick up the phone. And I was told, that my girlfriend at the time that I was with, that I should not be seen in the white part of town after dark. Wow. Too dangerous. Because they knew who I was. This is in 1972.
Sure.
In Mendenhall, Mississippi. So that experience, and I'm still in touch with some of the folks in that community, John Perkins, that influenced what I brought to the story and talked about, as well as Harve and David. So that resonated for us as it becomes an obvious thing with Green Blood and Spock as an outsider. But it just fed into this. And then when you watch this movie and other movies, you see how that theme and stuff is just not, it's Gone with the Wind was the year before. It's just not going away.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's as much about xenophobia as it is about racism, in the sense that there is so much prejudice against Spock, and it's Kirk that ends up, sort of standing up for him. And you're right. I mean, that goes to the tenets of the best of Star Trek, which is where it's about something. And as you said, it's yes, you may be influenced by movies. I mean, Nick Meyer can be influenced by The Enemy Below and Run Silent, Run Deep for Khan, but really at the heart of that movie, for the plot mechanics, but the heart of the movie is about aging. It's about confronting the sins of the past, and that's very personal. That's not a movie. That's life.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be a big part of your script. These issues that everyone's confronting, including Dr. McCoy, who's a little older.
And it's what makes it all connect, right? All those things make it connect. Yeah, so McCoy is older, and he's, Jim nicknames him, Bones. And what's fun is that they're all, we see the early development of these people. So, it was fun to develop. One of our first images was about, James T. Kirk flying a crop duster and crashing it into the barn. But, you want to open in the 23rd century with a mailbox that says Kirk, and the opening is flapping open and back with the wind, and then the futuristic crop duster comes over. We began to visualize and storyboard. I couldn't find the storyboards, but we began to visualize what this might be and how it might be illustrative of who these guys are. That he's crazy. He wants to fly, and he destroys this thing going into the barn and upsets his mom and upsets the family in doing this as he goes off to Starfleet Academy. And the same thing with Spock coming, that from his background on Vulcan, disappointing people because he's made a choice, because he can't stand the slavery and all of that represents. And he goes to make a difference. But, he knows nothing about the customs on Earth and dating and sex and everything else. And so there's a fun scene where he tries to explain what Pon farr is to, another cadet. And she's worried and needs to protect herself. So as they put their hands up, she says, "Hang on a second," and goes and get a glove out of her purse so that she can, protect herself.
No love.
No love.
Right.
Spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, Kirk's paramour, the woman that he falls pretty hard for in this movie, dies, which is a really gutsy call, and it really lands, I think. And I think in the motion, had this been realized as a motion picture, it really would have been a very powerful scene. Can you talk about that decision? Because it really informs Kirk's character. That's where a prequel helps, knowing his future, to go back and see why he becomes the ladies' man who isn't making these serious attachments later on. Really, I think, helps make the prequel more compelling.
There's also references to his father. There's references to, missions where, his father is lost. And unfortunately, a lot of times those tragedies are the things that shape us sometimes into harder individuals, but also shape us into deeper individuals that have, more characters. He tries to explain character to Spock. He tries to explain to him what it means to have character. And, I think that's Harve and David's brilliance in putting that in, and Harve willing to take that chance that person, that we kill off that character so soon to sober up. Jim and have him learn at a young age of what's worthwhile and what isn't.
So let me just ask you, kind of on that front, when you're talking about these characters as prequel characters, and I'm going to reference a film that you worked on. So when I was working on X-Men First Class, the first question we had to ask ourselves, other than are we crazy to do this, is how do we make, Charles Xavier, Eric Lensher, how do we make them young men and not just, it's Professor Xavier, but with hair? So when you began the process of this, beyond just the logistics of how do they get in the academy and like what are the themes, did you guys go through a process on how do we reverse engineer a young Jim Kirk? How do we reverse engineer a young Spock? And what kinds of things did you land on? What things did you reject?
It's a great question. I don't remember a lot of that in terms of a process. We did do some of that with Spock on the third movie, but that we had Leonard to do that because he had given this a great deal of thought. We didn't really involve the cast in this process, so we didn't have that as necessarily as a backdrop to do that. But I don't remember a lot of those discussions in terms of how we backed up on that. That could have been David doing a lot of that on his own.
When word of this script development got out, I seem to remember some of the cast members responding in public
Vociferously.
about it. How was that dealt with and realized?
Yeah, they were obviously threatened by that somehow we were trying to, cut them off. That was not necessarily the intent. The intent was about the stories and about the characters and about the franchise. That's what it was about. But it's reasonable and honest for them to react that way. Harve, was my mentor for about 10 years, and he, kicks into statesman mode, and he knows how to handle and discuss and say that in a way that I remember
his quote. He said, "This is not a stop to our original adventures. This is just we're taking a little break and taking a look at them younger, and then we'll go back to our our favorite cast."
Yeah, and that was always the intention. It was never intended to cut anybody out and to leave them behind, but it didn't feel that way to them.
Yeah.
Mancuso ultimately had the end of the day, which was about marketing and about the 25th anniversary, that for them had much more import in terms of, again, the franchise and keeping it going. That said, it would have made sense to immediately, embark on this, but it just got shelved and pushed aside, and then management changed, and then it got lost in the shuffle, frankly, and then Harve moved on. When this didn't get made, Harve left, and that was a little bit of a rift as well that I think was uncomfortable for the cast as well as sort of the franchise. For a variety of reasons, I stayed on, but it just lost the momentum when Harve stepped away.
Right.
Well, I mean, Harve was in a difficult situation in a sense because, he had butted heads on 4 with Leonard. He butted heads with Bill on 5. And, obviously when you're top of the call sheet, are going to out-trump the producer, and everyone liked you. So that really opened the door for you being a producer. And also, Harve was sort of a thankless task at that point for him because, they clearly didn't want him there anymore.
Well, they did want him. I think Harve drew the line. Harve said, if you don't make this, I'm not staying. And he was hoping that was not an imaginary line, but a bright line that they would not cross. But they walked over it.
You talked about, obviously this pushback from the original cast that was going to lose out on their paychecks if, the next movie wasn't an original Star Trek cast, but a new Star Trek cast. And it seemed as though you came up with a way of addressing it, because I think in one draft, McCoy is in the bookends,
Yes.
and then later on it's Kirk and Spock in the bookends.
Yep. It bounced around. I mean, that was an attempt to sort of address that and at least think about it on paper in terms of how it would work. But
And I'm sorry, when I say Kirk and McCoy, it's Shatner, Nimoy, and D. Kelly, who would have been telling the story
Right.
to a new class.
Looking
and then
back.
we flash back, looking back.
exactly, looking back. Same set, but younger. The set with the trees weren't as big. You know, they weren't as mature, right?
And, it just, I think for any writer in this business who's been around and long enough, they have a drawer full of their specs that never got made or unproduced scripts, as we both can say.
Yeah.
And, you think, oh, man, that was a great scene. Sometimes you recycle it into something else. Other times you just wish, it had seen the light of a projector bulb. I wonder if there are any scenes that come to mind in this that you felt were really special that you were sorry you didn't get to realize.
Well, those death scenes do, sort of carve a deep mark, and so those were emotional, and but you can't just film that. It's got to be part of the whole story. You can't just run to those things. There was some fun stuff in there and humor that worked at the time. As I read over again recently, it doesn't resonate in the same way it did, 35 years ago. But I don't know. We had fun envisioning it back then, and too much time has gone by now. And J.J. Abrams took a shot at doing it. I'm sure he read this because Paramount owns it. But I don't remember anything that stood out that I wish we could have filmed.
And there certainly are scenes in the JJ version that seem very redolent of scenes in your script. So there's that. That's as close as it's got to getting made.
Well, it's Paramount's property. So, I mean, they paid for the script, they paid us for it, and, it's theirs to use. And so there's no spilled milk about that.
Well, we talked a lot about Harve Bennett, and obviously you worked with him very closely, certainly on 4, but you were in post-production on 2, you were involved in 3, you even were around a little bit.
We did a couple of other things. We did A Woman Called Golda.
Right, the miniseries.
And then we did the Jesse Owens story, another miniseries, which was, amazing and fun. We figured out, I helped him figure out a way that we could match into the footage from Leni Riefenstahl's Olympiad, and at the time it was seamless and worked. I had to contact Leni Riefenstahl. She was some 75 or 80 years old, deep sea diving in Africa, off the coast of Africa, and had to get in touch with her to get permissions. I mean, only in our business do you're doing the weirdest thing.
That is,
weird.
We've over the years we've had the chance to interview you many times and have really great conversations about things. I'd never heard that story, and that's wild that you had to track down Leni Riefenstahl. To get because I mean, Triumph of the Will is public domain, but Olympiad wasn't.
There was parts of it we needed her permission, and so we had to get in contact with her and trying to track her down. And she's 75 or 80 years old, deep sea diving.
That's crazy.
Boys from Brazil, only different.
Was she ultimately agreeable, or did she?
Yeah, no.
push back?
Ultimately, she was agreeable, but it's just bizarre little stories.
Normally at a Star Trek convention, when you're talking about Nazis, it's usually patterns of force. We got off a little off topic. One thing about Harve, he was such an important part of that second era of Star Trek. He's been called the man who saved Star Trek. Obviously, we're fans of Star Trek, the motion picture here, but there's no question that Star Trek II was the film that put the franchise back on its feet as a box office success. It's a brilliant film. Can you just share a little bit, of you, because you've been a real champion of his. You worked together for a long time. just a little bit, give us a sense of what
Sure.
kind of person he was. Obviously, he's very smart. I mean, he was a whiz kid growing up. Not a whiz kid, a quiz kid. When
Whiz
he was
kid.
growing
Whiz
up.
kid.
Yeah.
Whiz
And he
kid
didn't get
makes
the
games.
answers. He didn't get the answers. He knew the answers.
He knew the answers, and he was just he was the civilian liaison to the Secretary of the Army or something like that. I mean, he was involved in so many different things, and primarily from that stuff as a quiz kid, where he was, nationally known. Yeah, Harve was just, I learned so much from him about storytelling from a producer. I'm not a writer, but as a producer, how structure is the most important thing in terms of what carries the meaning of the story. And so we would watch movies together and talk about that structure, and I learned a lot just listening, observing, and paying attention. And then also the way he dealt with executives, the way he dealt with actors. And he was very, courageous and kind to invite me in every time an actor came in, so that, there was just a parade of people coming through, and he was connected, at a different era. So in A Woman Called Golda, we had Ingrid Bergman. It was her last movie. So, I'm old, but not as old as those guys were in terms of, interacting with Ingrid Bergman on one movie.
And he gave Leonard the chance to act with Ingrid Bergman, which for Leonard was that was a big deal.
It was a big deal. She was a big deal. And she was getting sick near the end of that picture. And I can't remember the disease, but her arm had sort of bloated, almost to the size of her leg. And so we staged the movie, if you watch it, hiding that. And we worked to sort of preserve her sort of dignity and beauty about that without making her do things that would cause her discomfort. And that was sort of the old Hollywood. That was sort of the old way of doing things. I remember going to dinner, Harve and Carol and my wife and I, with Sammy Davis Jr., because we were talking about a project with him. There was just a lot of that stuff that Harve brought, that sensibility. He played tennis with VJ all the time. All the time in his backyard. He had a place there in Beverly Hills, or West Side, in West LA. And, he was just part of that era because he had grown up doing all that television for Universal, working with so many people, and he was beloved. Barry Diller, who later became the chairman at Paramount, was an intern for Harve at ABC for about 15 minutes, as Barry Diller was on a rocket path. And when Barry, came to Paramount, he quickly endorsed Harve as someone who could help out. And in saving the franchise, it was Charlie Bluthorn from Gulf and Western, or as Mel Brooks likes to say, in Gulf and Devour, that really. He said to Harve, "Can you make a good Star Trek movie for less than $40 million?" And Harve said, "I can make 5." Yeah. Because, he knew how to do that and tell the story and focus on that and not squander it on effects that weren't helping to tell the story or integral to the characters.
I'm going to ask you a question that's going to sound like a non sequitur, but I'm pretty sure you were the one who told us this story, and I think given the new Naked Gun movie just came out, this is probably worth sharing because it's really funny. So I think on Star Trek II, there was a competition between Star Trek and Police Squad, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. We, the guys that did Airplane, Zucker and Abrams, and one of their producers, Rich Cowan, I'm still in touch with him, they were making a TV series called Police Squad. And Police Squad's based on
M Squad.
M Squad, that's right, M Squad. And again, it's hard to imagine this today, but it was really a family thing happening at the Paramount lot. We had 10 or 12 TV shows on the air. We were making Star Trek on the same stage for God knows how many years it was the same stage in the bridge of the Enterprise, stage 9. And there were lots of other movies that were shooting. It was a very active lot. So it was easy on a TV show like Police Squad to have a guest star from Grease, or a guest star from Star Trek, or a guest star from whatever shooting on the lot. Actually, for Police Squad, it didn't matter what we're shooting. We're just going to get a famous face and come in. And then every week on Police Squad, the main star that you'd promote would be killed in the opening sequence. So Shatner was there like a mafia boss, whatever, then he's gunned down in a booth, in the opening title, before the show even begins. But there was no laugh track, and so the show ultimately failed, but it developed into the Naked Gun movies and all of that. So this was also with, Star Trek and the TV division, and we're trying to protect it, and there's putting up nobody allowed unless you are a Star Trek, cast member or crew member. And then we had badges. No crew member allowed without a badge. And then the Police Squad was shooting across the way, and they'd put up signs and say, no one allowed here unless your badge is larger than a Star Trek badge. And then it just went back and forth, and it was fun. And then one morning we come to work on stage 9, and across the stage, early in the morning or overnight, they had made a banner covering the entire stage, rolling down, that just said, "Fuck Star Trek." And it was just so fun. And that, today you'd be taken up into HR or probably walked out in handcuffs. And it came down after a couple of hours because it was obviously somebody got upset about it. But, there was a fun family atmosphere on the lot, which I don't think that's coming back. No. I don't think that's
sibling rivalry.
Well, the irony of that story is that 20 years later, those were the Deep Space Nine stages.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's, it's not coming back. It's so sad. Because the production is never going to come back to that degree in Los Angeles. And
I don't think so, not in the same way.
And there's not the warmth and camaraderie. And
it's Detroit with pretty people now.
Yeah.
These streamers just don't operate like a family business the way that...
The technology, that's a whole other subject, but the technology has changed all that. Those years I'll just give you a couple of memories that I think are pretty interesting. One about Star Trek. With my second or third day on the lot, I'd been working in a retailer doing employee videos, and I got a chance to work in post-production, interviewed, got the job. And I'm like third day, and I go to the commissary. And in the commissary, I'm 6'4". I'm standing behind 2 6'6" Klingons in full makeup that can only get something with a straw because they can't take the makeup off because they were doing reshoots for the motion picture. And I remember standing there going, what the hell have I gotten myself into? What am I doing? Because I was not involved with Star Trek at that point, although I helped them get, the prints out to the theaters and helped them with all of that kind of stuff. I remember going to, because I was an employee and I was a junior executive in post-production, I remember going to the wrap party soon after I started for Grease. And I remember seeing Olivia Newton-John, and like a geek, I couldn't take my eyes off of her because she's so beautiful, and it was embarrassing. I had to walk away. It's just, you hear about these things, and then you see it. Now, I think I've gotten over that, and I don't really give a shit when I see some of these people. It's fine. It's like, whatever, they're an actor, whatever. But it was, the initial part of that. And then every summer, what Paramount would do in the back lot is that we would have some fake movie marquees on the back lot, the New York streets that we would use. And in the summer, there'd be a party for all 8,000 employees. And each marquee would be the summer movie that we're promoting in June or late June or July 4th or August. And there'd be bands. I remember the Doobie Brothers were there for one of them. And there'd be a different band at each marquee. And it was a rolling feast and an all-night party for all the employees at the studio. That's never going to happen again.
No.
And that happened summer after summer until, it became more corporate and all that. So anyway.
Well, before this turns into an elegy for old Hollywood, And remember we used to think old Hollywood was, Casablanca and Charlie Chaplin.
Ingrid Bergman.
And Ingrid Bergman. I want to open it up to questions because I'm sure you have some questions about this fascinating Star Trek project that almost was, but wasn't. And I'd love to hear your questions for Ralph. He's just a treasure trove of information about the history of the Star Trek films.
So you mentioned that the plan was to have some of the original cast members in the framing tale, right? Like telling.
Yes.
But was that enough for Shatner? Like
No, of course not.
Because I always thought he didn't want anybody who was potentially an inheritor of the role or the mantle.
Of course not.
Okay, so was he in strong opposition to this, or he's like, I'll come in and take the paycheck, or?
I don't know if he stirred him up or what, but I mean, they were all naturally disappointed that they wouldn't, do that. I think there's another part of this that I think is complicated that is not necessarily obvious from a storytelling point of view. If you're Indiana Jones, if you're James Bond, if you're, a singular kind of hero, that kind of structure is a lot easier to write. But when you're an ensemble, I mean, I can't tell you how many times Nichelle Nichols would call me and say, I'm tired of being the galactic operator. I'm not doing it anymore. And so I thought we did a good job on 4 of giving everybody a meaningful role to play to pull it all together. And we paired them off in different ways, like with Walter and Nichelle and all of that. That's hard to do. That's hard to write. In a TV show, Scotty has his episode. Nichelle has her episode. It's easier to do in television. In features, it's not so easy. It's a lot harder to write that and to make that successful. So, I mean, there were television actors that graduated into the feature film business, and, it was natural for them to feel like they were being threatened, but yeah, it was not even a conversation I had with Bill. You knew what the answer was going to be.
It's not unlike what happened a few years later with Star Trek The Next Generation, where the original cast was very much adamantly opposed to Next Generation. And if you go back and read the contemporaneous interviews, they're all like lambasting Next Gen. It will never work. They can't replace us. This is a terrible idea. Well, you can be the judge of that.
So given the way the business works, if you had made this and it had been very successful, would they ever have gone back to an original series cast movie sequel, or would they have just carried this forward?
We were trying to expand the universe. We were trying to expand it in a way that would be the younger generation and the origin stories, and would also not, negate the ability to do more movies with the original cast. They're beloved. There was no disdain for them. It was, how do we expand it and be sure that we can carry on when they didn't want to be involved?
But if the movie had come out and done huge box office, more than any previous Star Trek, how would the studio have responded to doing a classic?
That, my friend, is what I call a high-class problem.
Yeah.
I want that problem.
Yes.
So you talk about how this went into development after Star Trek V, and by that point, Star Trek The Next Generation had begun. So did The Next Generation's existence factor into either the cancellation or worry, or with this movie also coming out, did it worry the cast as well, since there was Next Gen and this potential new version of their characters?
Honestly, we did not see The Next Generation as any kind of competition. That, too, was expanding the universe in a different way. So it wasn't really a concern of ours. It was about, how do we deal with these characters? How are these characters going to carry on? And we thought we could expand it by going backward and forward at the same time. But, they only wanted to go forward with the same cast, again, because of that anniversary 25th milestone.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrea Johnson, and I want to thank you for your forward thinking, because it has just been I mean, it's in history, right? We just love what you've done. Myself, I'm very inspired to write, and I'm kind of curious if you had any advice for us aspiring writers, and what kind of current things you're doing today.
I can give you some high-level advice in this little snippet, right? At least from my perspective as a producer, I think every story has worth and value. Every story is worth telling. But there's a limited number of stories that an audience will pay for. That's part of my job as a producer, to figure out what that difference is. How do I get it to pay? Because otherwise it's a one-off, and I'm trying to make it into a business that's repeatable, so you can do something that's enjoyable and then you get to do it again. I think you have to write stories that are lasting, that are broad, that are not, universal is not the right word I want to use, but they have to be big enough that they're evergreen, they're lasting, they're not just of the moment, of the politic or the culture of the moment. You've got to write something that actually gets at the deep human stuff. And if you think about it, stories that last are about a few things. What is love? Why am I here? What is life about? And those are stories that resonate and play over and over and over again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the advice.
You're welcome.
Hi. Hey, can I ask a question that I didn't get to ask after today's earlier session about Star Trek 4?
Sure.
Well, I read an interview with George Takei a few years ago, and he said when they were filming in San Francisco that they wrote and filmed a scene with Sulu meeting his ancestors in old San Francisco. And I'm just wondering if that exists anyplace. It would be a great add-on to a Blu-ray edition.
You know what? I don't know that that was shot.
Oh,
but I do remember talking about that would be very fun to do, rooted in San Francisco, but I don't think it was ever
not filmed. Okay.
I think
too bad.
They were dealing with the young actor that was playing Sulu's great-grandfather, something like that, and he just was so camera shy that they couldn't get any performance out of him. So
and they told George you'd come back the next day, but you were on location and it wasn't going to work. But there's stills of it.
There's stills, yeah.
Yes, sir. Great.
Yeah, but they
these
never
guys know
got
more
any,
about than I do.
They never got any stuff shot on camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we shot anything.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi. As mentioned, Star Trek 5, or TNG had already come out when Star Trek 5 premiered, and one of the more genius things that I think about that movie that happened is that it was subtly merged with TNG in terms of Jerry Goldsmith returning for the music and Herman Zimmerman coming in as production designer. So I was always curious, was that a Bill Shatner decision? Was it a Harve Bennett decision? Was there an executive at Paramount that wanted that kind of merger between this new series and the new movie?
I think that the Jerry Goldsmith decision was definitely Bill and Harve and getting back to the roots, Final Frontier and all of that. So that was genuine, and the studio endorsed that. That wasn't an issue. Herman's involvement, I think, may have been his availability and his work on Next Generation. So, yeah, that probably played into it. He was there, he was accessible, and he had some good ideas.
And the infrastructure was there with his crew.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
By the way, I want to say the solar starfish from Encounter at Farpoint, we have much joy and gratitude for you. And what a spectacular costume that was. They took it off already, but they walked in. It was hard to miss them walking in with that costume. Go ahead.
Yes, you said earlier that, you know, as a producer, it's your job to figure out how to get the story to pay, right? And I totally agree with that. But with the rise of the streaming services and stuff like that, it seems like shows are, you know, paying sort of indirectly. What you know, they're not selling commercial time anymore. So it's not like a show is directly making money on a streaming platform. So what meter stick do they use now to determine whether or not a show is profitable or not?
Well, look, I think it's a volatile, bumpy marketplace at the moment, and every filmmaker is trying to figure out, can I make a movie? Will it play in the theater? Or do I put it on some streaming platform? How do I pay for it? How does a streamer figure out how to pay for it? A lot of it all gets back to advertising. How can I get eyeballs? How can I get, bites? How can I get hits that I can measure and show, a sponsor that actually the message is getting out, and you ought to want to do this with my show because you'll sell more detergent. I think everybody's out there trying to figure that out right now. That's a problem for low-budget filmmakers and high-budget filmmakers. Everybody's got a different metric, and the goal line keeps moving. So I don't have a good answer for you in terms of, if you do these three things, it's successful. I think everybody's trying to figure that out in a new marketplace. The landscape is new. We're not sure.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, Ralph, you're such a font of information. We've been so lucky to have you last year for our discussion of Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 5, and this year for the Academy years.
We're going to run out.
Star Trek 4. We're going to run out of movies. I know. You got to come back next year and do Star Trek 6.
So let me put a plug in for Wizard of Oz.
Oh, please, go ahead.
So I'm the head of production at Sphere, which is across town. And thank you. That means you may have gone and seen some of the stuff we've done. We have something running right now called Postcard from Earth. It's a 51-minute documentary. And it's at a scale. Is there anybody out here that's been there and seen it? A few people. Okay, good. The display surface is 3.5 acres. There's 167,000 speakers. It runs at 60 frames a second, 16K by 16K. The best on your television is maybe 2K. You might have a 4K TV, but you might not have a 4K signal. The visual spectacle is amazing. And so now, so we've got a couple things playing. There's a U2 movie playing, and we've had a number of concerts, residencies. They use a lot of digital tools in the backgrounds. But we're coming out with Wizard of Oz at the end of August, which is taking a 1939 movie filmed in Technicolor, 3-strip Technicolor, and blowing it up from that 35 millimeter size to 3.5 acres. And it's a spectacular experience. The idea is that we want to take you back to if you really are in Kansas with Dorothy and with the Scarecrow and in Munchkin Land. And you can imagine that when you take something and blow it out that big, it starts to fall apart very quickly. So that's where we've used a lot of tools, current technology tools, to make that seamless. And we're trying to do it with the integrity that none of Dorothy's voice changes, none of the performances change. But, the spectacle, when you take the existing skies and put them up there, you can see the brush marks. It's just, nothing is hidden. When you see the Cowardly Lion's makeup, stuff that you probably never saw on television is in big, bold relief on this display surface. We haven't touched that because we want you to see that. But it's quite an experience. I'll tell you the one thing that I knew we could make this. We took the sound, and it's I don't know how much, I don't want to get too geeky, but there's an optical soundtrack is all that's left. All the original stems and tracks are gone. So there's a composite optical track, which is probably 5 or 6 generations away from the original. We took that track, and with new tools, I had Ben Burt a friend of mine who's an Academy Award-winning sound designer, separate Dorothy's voice singing Over the Rainbow from the orchestra and the sound effects and everything else. So we have Dorothy singing a cappella somewhere over the rainbow. The power of this 18-year-old's voice is emotional and remarkable. In 1939, they only had the music in mono. They didn't have stereo. So we went to the same stage with a Hollywood orchestra, 80 pieces, and we re-recorded the entire score to Oz in stereo for 164,000 speakers. Wow. You will come and buy a ticket just to hear the music. It's that kind of experience. So, anyway, that's my 10-cent
Very
plug.
cool.
Now, are you allowed to say what else is coming up, or is that the limit of?
We're working on the one after that next year is an extreme sports experience with Jimmy Chin and Chai, who did Free Solo. So Alex Honnold, who climbs El Capitan without a rope. It's 5 of those kinds of experiences on that canvas, and hopefully keeping you riveted to your seat for the entire time.
Fantastic. Well, like we said, Ralph, we're so happy. We're so honored to have you here. We hope you'll do it again, and we can complete our look back at all these fantastic Star Trek movies that you were so involved with making. So thank you on behalf of everyone for being here and making these movies we love.
Thank you. We're back from the Academy.
We're back, and we're like younger now.
We're back from outer space.
Yeah. Look, and it's funny, people saying, oh, you're talking about the Academy years. Do you want to say anything about Starfleet Academy, the new show? And I don't really, because all we have to go by is the trailer, and I don't. I have a lot of thoughts about it, which I don't really feel comfortable sharing, because I want to see it first before I share any opinions about it. I don't know if
you got to eat it
the same way
before you. Anyway, yeah, it's good. I'm sure it's going to be great.
I'm a big Paul Giamatti fan. That's all I can say.
Dr.
WUFP.
Dr. Lecter, what are you doing in outer space?
But
that's the wrong actress.
Is it? Is it not?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Holly Hunter is not in Silence of the
Lambs. No, she is, but it's the Mandela effect, asshole.
The Holly Hunter from Broadcast News, if she was in. Yeah.
You're right.
That's
By the way, a couple of plugs. Jordan Garfinkel, longtime listener and writing partner to Lisa Klink, has a new Batman podcast called Bat Guys Return. So you want to check out Jordan Garfinkel talking about Batman. They got some great guests coming on. The late Jim Shooter stops by, and a couple other special guests. So Bat Guys Return. Well, they can't get Denny O'Neil, can they? Unless Darren could do a Denny O'Neil. So they got that. That's going to be a great podcast. Of course, the Kickstarter is still going on for Peter Holmstrom, Daniel Noah, who are doing the documentary on George Lucas's Lost Years. You want to check that out. They got some grand plans. Of course, they are behind the
but not George Lucas's Lost Weekend.
The Young Indiana Jones Chroniclers, and that's a terrific podcast about the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles from Peter and Daniel. You may want to check that out if you're interested. And of course, Doug Drexler is continuing his Kickstarter for Trekstar, which will be a documentary chronicling his career in and out of Star Trek, and is an Oscar-winning makeup artist. So if that's something that's interesting to you, check it out on Kickstarter. Darren will be at the official Star Trek set tour November 20th to 22nd. We'll all be in Columbus, Ohio, December 5th to the 7th. That's a really special convention. So if you can make it down, check it out. A lot of great Star Trek guests. And of course, the Treksperts will be there. Continuing our Trek at 60. So we'll be doing another one of those panels, and hope to have you there to share your thoughts about your favorite episodes and what it was about Star Trek that spoke to you. And of course, we'll be back in Richmond, Virginia, March 19th to the 22nd at GalaxyCon Richmond. And fear not, if you like the water, Darren is going to be cruising on the Star Trek cruise this winter, February 20th to 27th. You don't want to miss him on the Star Trek cruise, and let us know how it goes.
So if I make it to Richmond, that means I made it through the cruise.
That's right.
Isn't that a Barry Manilow song?
No, that's I made it through the rain.
Oh, I made it through the rain.
Totally different
thing.
thing.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
You seem to know a lot about this Barry Manilow.
Well, people don't realize that we used to sing Copacabana at all the special occasions.
At every special occasion,
So
every
whenever
wedding.
our friends got married or
Yeah.
divorced, we would sing Copacabana. Bar mitzvahs, Copacabana. I don't know why. I don't know how it started.
I don't know
but
either.
It was great. It was great. It was Darren and me and Rob Burnett and Paul Salamoff and I forget who else, Steve Melching, and we would do Copacabana. You could not have a big event, and of course Dan Weber, without us singing Copacabana. And we were awful, but it was delightful.
Well,
So
it's debatable whether we were awful. I guess it depends on how many
I remember
the guests had.
When I was meeting with the DJ for our for my wedding, and I said, "Oh well, I just want to make sure this is where we do Copacabana because that is a prerequisite for
tradition."
It's tradition, exactly. I'm glad I didn't play any Star Trek music though. So anyway, but this is I love the Trek's Not Taken. I love the Phase 2 was great. The unmade original Star Trek. We're gonna have to do a Next Generation at some point. I did a bunch of articles for Cinefantastic about. I'd have to find them about unproduced Star Trek or pitches they're really interesting, but I can't do it from memory. I'd have to go back and reread those articles. And
we definitely have to talk about the sequel to Piece of the Action that was pitched.
Oh,
the Quentin Tarantino one?
Yeah. No, the one for Next Generation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, no, it was really for Deep Space Nine because that was the alternative to Trials and Tribulations.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was for Next Gen.
No, it was for with Deep Space Nine. It had been narrowed down to two possibilities. They're unwilling to respond. They're unable to respond.
No, we just got to get Quentin to go to a scale of 8,
which was Tribbles and then the Sigma Iota pitch, but that never happened. So anyway, can I go to the boilerplate ending now, or is there anything you want to add?
Well, if you want. If you want to do the same thing over and over again, that's fine.
I do, because this is, this is what I got to do. So please rate and review Inglorious Treksperts today, wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can subscribe at Spotify at TrekspertsPlus.com, where you'll get access to bonus episodes, early commercial-free drops of episodes, and more. So make sure you do that. Inglorious Treksperts is a production of the Treksperts Podcast Network. Darren Dochterman, Ashley Miller, and myself are executive producers. Peter Holmstrom, Brian Mixer produces. Mark Rivera is our audio sound mixer, and John Carney is our social media manager. It's also a great hamburger place, Carney's. Inglorious Treksperts is copyright 2025 in the train car by Treksperts Plus. Inglorious Treksperts is available wherever you listen and on video via Spotify and YouTube. And listen today and enjoy
today
with much joy and gratitude today. Now we're doing Neil Diamond today. Oh my God, we're doing all these awful 70s. They're not awful. I like
Neil Diamond.
And Neil Diamond, he's a diamond in the rough. He's a lithium. Okay, so anyway, I think we're done. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. Of course, we'll be back next Thursday with an all-new episode. But until then, on behalf of Darren Dochterman, Ashley Edward Miller, myself, Mark A. Altman, keep on trekking ingloriously, of course.
At the edge of the universe, 400 men and women are probing the immeasurable blackness of space. Their leaders are an Earthman with no fear and a stranger with no heart. Travel beyond our time and solar system, into new galaxies, into worlds beyond your dreams. Star Trek, every week, in color on the NBC television network.